That said, this is an explanation, not an excuse. There have been fast-paced arcadey shooters with accurate hitboxes before, and the sun didn't collapse, and the capsules themselves are a few small nations bigger than they ought to be, even if they aren't quite as bad as they look from the glitch-to-shit kill cams that must have been outsourced to Korea for all the liberties they insist on taking. Also, you may have noticed that I said this is all because of the way that Paladins was originally designed, and that's because over the past few years, the time to kill has been steadily driven down, and I'm starting to think the only reason it hasn't crashed through the floor yet is because mobility is already there to act as a cushion. Toss in the fact that the majority of DPS champions have hit scan weapons now, 2 of which are snipers and 3 of which are machine guns, and yeah, the hitboxes have become a bit of a problem. In my eyes, there are 2 realistic solutions to this. Either fix the hitboxes to reflect what the game has become, or balance the console versions of the game separately, bring back the hypermobility, change the firing squad's machine guns to projectile weapons, rework every champion with auto aim, and raise the time to kill to the point where larger hitboxes like this make any kind of sense. I'd choose door number 2 in a heartbeat because mobility meta has always been the best, and if you disagree, then I'm truly sorry about whatever happened to you, but I need you to understand that it doesn't excuse the person you've become. So yes, in terms of basic aiming and shooting, Overwatch is a far less forgiving game than Paladins, which is why it's unfortunate that the improved hitboxes are in service of heroes who don't require aiming to begin with and others who get free team wipes at the press of a button. I know it's not exactly a fresh criticism to point out how so many of Overwatch's ultimates being win the game buttons makes it frustrating to play, but it bears repeating since we're 2 years in and almost nothing has been done about it. I understand that there are people who like that they work this way, and if you're one of those people, that's fine, but do me a favor and take some deep breaths because I get the impression you're the type to forget. Blizzard has been improving on this with the more recent heroes, since they're generally weaker and or have somewhat reasonable windups, but they've also gone back and broken one of the only ultimates in the base game that I guess wasn't quite bullshit enough for their liking. For anyone who didn't play Overwatch at launch, let me tell you about the time when Zarya's ultimate was fair. If you used it at the wrong time and didn't bait out enemy mobility before chucking it into a teamfight, several characters could escape it, meaning that it not only was a utility, but a utility with counterplay. It required actually thinking beyond how many people will this hit, so naturally Blizzard gave it a cripple to bring it up to the no Symmetra main left behind level of everyone else's. I mentioned earlier that Zenyatta is my favorite character in this game, and one of the reasons for that is his ultimate being a fuck your ultimate button, and that reflects my sentiments perfectly. That said, requiring a fuck your ultimate button or specific hero selections is about the least interesting way you could possibly have given these abilities counterplay, especially when knowing whether or not they're up is reliant on guesswork since they don't operate on standard cooldowns like those in a MOBA. That's not a criticism of the way that ultimates charge in these games. I actually think it's really clever how this method incentivizes players to be proactive in order to get them up faster. And I'm not going to pass up on an opportunity to sweat nervously at respawn, so I'll go ahead and call it genius. It's a criticism of the fact that the ultimates themselves are far too powerful to have ambiguous cooldowns, especially when they aren't being telegraphed properly. In Paladins, ultimates don't fire off until after they've wound up and played an audio cue, which you might think is the case in Overwatch since they added voice lines to cue in ultimates, but several of the voice lines don't start to play until after the ultimates have started firing. Pharah's can kill just about any non-tank before her voice line has even started from 5 to 10 meters away, and her jetpack becomes effectively silent about a second after she takes off or uses jump jet, so she can easily get that close from behind without being heard. Average reaction time to auditory stimulus is 0.17 seconds and 0.25 for visual ones, meaning that from this distance and accounting for RNG, projectile speed, and spread, Pharah's ultimate can reasonably kill the majority of heroes in less time than they can even be expected to react to it. You could argue that it's the player's fault for letting her get behind them, but Overwatch doesn't exist on a 2D plane like a MOBA. You've added an entire third axis of movement here. When just about every character in the game can burst you down in under a second, expecting the player to keep track of every single enemy's position at all times on top of everything else as the only method of countering the ultimate, which only works if your hero is designed to survive or counter it in the first place, isn't difficult. It's unreasonable. This is a symptom of a larger issue though. Ultimates have to kill this quickly because of how low the overall time to kill is. If the ultimates had proper telegraphs and counters, they'd become borderline useless at the highest level because the person casting them would be bursted down before getting any notable benefit. Paladins has a higher time to kill, and the ultimate design benefits from that greatly, as it means that the majority of them can be utilities that help set up crazy plays through follow-up and teamwork rather than being a button that makes crazy plays for you. The fact that Pip's evil mojo Mojo deals no damage, doesn't heal, doesn't hold anyone in place, and can actually save enemies while still arguably being one of the strongest teamfighting abilities in the entire game is a testament to that. The ultimate itself is an explosive that turns everyone in a 30-foot radius into a chicken with 1500 health.